Have you ever wondered what happens after the cannons fall silent and the treaties are signed? We often focus on the battles and strategies of World War I, but the world that emerged from its ashes was almost unrecognizable. The war to end all wars didn't just redraw maps. It redrew the very fabric of society, politics, and the human consciousness. Let's dive into the profound and lasting after effects of the Great War, which are still shaping our world today. First, let's talk about the sheer human cost. The numbers are staggering. Over 16 million people, both soldiers and civilians, lost their lives. Another 20 million were wounded. This was a scale of loss humanity had never witnessed before. An entire generation of young men, often called the Lost Generation, was decimated. In countries like France and Germany, nearly every family was touched by loss. This immense grief and trauma didn't just disappear when the war ended. It lingered, casting a long shadow over the 1920s and 30s. The psychological impact, what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, was widespread but poorly understood. Soldiers returned home with shell shock, haunted by the horrors of trench warfare, and their society struggled to support them. The political landscape of the world was completely transformed. Four massive empires that had dominated the globe for centuries simply vanished. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the German Empire, and the Russian Empire all crumbled. From their ruins, a host of new countries emerged, especially in Eastern and Central Europe. Nations like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia appeared on the map. This was based on the principle of self-determination, championed by US President Woodrow Wilson. The idea was that people should have the right to govern themselves. While noble in theory, the reality was messy. New borders often chewed through ethnic and cultural groups, creating new minorities and sowing the seeds of future conflicts. We're still dealing with the consequences of some of these borders today. Economically, Europe was in shambles. The war had been incredibly expensive. Nations like Britain and France were deeply in debt, much of it owed to the United States. This shifted the global economic balance of power. For the first time, the United States became the world's leading economic power and a creditor nation. Germany, on the other hand, was crushed by the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty imposed crippling reparations payments on Germany, forcing it to pay for the damages caused by the war. This wasn't just a financial burden, it was a national humiliation. The German economy spiraled into hyperinflation in the early 1920s. Imagine your life savings becoming worthless overnight. This economic desperation created a fertile ground for extremist political movements to grow. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was meant to create a lasting peace. However, many historians now see it as a major cause of World War II. The war guilt clause placed sole blame for the war on Germany and its allies, which fostered a deep sense of resentment among the German people. The harsh reparations and territorial losses fueled a desire for revenge. It's a classic example of how a victor's peace, imposed without a sense of fairness or reconciliation, can backfire spectacularly. It created an environment where a figure like Adolf Hitler could rise to power, promising to restore Germany's honor and tear up the hated treaty. Socially, the war was a catalyst for immense change. With millions of men away at the front, women stepped into roles they had never occupied before. They worked in factories, on farms, and in offices, keeping the home front running. This experience was transformative. It proved that women were just as capable as men, and it fueled the fight for suffrage, or the right to vote. In many countries, including the United States and Britain, women gained the right to vote in the years immediately following the war. The traditional social order was shaken up, and in the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, saw new freedoms and a questioning of old values. Technological advancements that were developed for the war also found their way into civilian life. Aviation, for example, took a giant leap forward. Planes that were once used for reconnaissance and dogfights became the basis for the commercial airline industry. Radio communication, vital for coordinating troops, became a mass medium, connecting people in unprecedented ways. Even medical innovations, like blood banks and new surgical techniques developed to treat wounded soldiers, had a lasting positive impact on public health. The war, for all its destruction, accelerated the path of technological change. But the war also left a deep cultural scar. The optimism of the pre-war era was shattered. The art, literature, and philosophy of the post-war period reflect a sense of disillusionment and cynicism. Movements like Dadaism and Surrealism rejected logic and reason, which seemed to have led only to senseless slaughter. Writers like Ernest Hemingway and Erich Maria Remarque, in his famous novel All Quiet on the Western Front, captured the brutal reality and futility of the conflict. The world had lost its innocence. Another major outcome was the creation of the League of Nations, an international organization designed to prevent future wars through diplomacy and collective security. It was the forerunner to today's United Nations. While the League ultimately failed to prevent World War II partly because major powers like the United States never joined, it was a revolutionary idea. It was the first time in history that a global body was established with the explicit goal of maintaining world peace. It laid the groundwork for the international cooperation we often take for granted today. Finally, the influenza pandemic of 1918, often called the Spanish flu, is inseparable from the war's aftermath. This deadly fetus spread like wildfire thanks to the massive movements of troops around the globe. It ended up killing an estimated 50 million people worldwide, far more than the war itself. It was a devastating final blow to a world already on its knees. So, when we look back at World War I, it's crucial to see beyond the trenches. The war's end was not a conclusion, but the start of a new, turbulent chapter in world history. It created new nations, shattered old empires, and unleashed economic, social, and political forces that led directly to the Great Depression and World War II. It fundamentally altered the global power structure and left a psychological mark that influenced generations. The echoes of the Great War are all around us, a powerful reminder of how a single conflict can change the world forever. Thanks for watching, and if you found this insightful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. See you next time.